World peace sucks in a place like Aurora, Colorado. Aurora, it's the monument to the American middle-class dream. It's peaceful, it's quiet, there's nothing to see here. Oh, what? You're looking at that? That is Buckley Space Force Base, and those billion-dollar golf balls are the reason this community thrives. The aerospace cluster pumps $70 billion into Colorado each year. Today, we're mapping out how the military and the economy intersect. In 4 chapters, we're breaking down how that number got so high, who's cashing the checks, why we can never stop, and why peace is a terrifying paradox. Starting off with what everybody wants more of: to understand why the military put the most important tech on Earth in this random town, we have to look at the 1950s. The defining emotion of the era was the absolute terror of being instantaneously vaporized. The military realized that keeping their command centers on the coast was a terrible idea. If a Soviet sub showed up, it was game over. They needed a physical, massive barrier of some sort. Standing at 14,000 feet and dividing North America in half, the Rocky Mountains are the perfect impenetrable fortress for the US military. Welcome to Colorado. That paranoia created a gravitational pull towards Colorado that economists like to call agglomeration. It basically means contractors, suppliers, and labor all concentrate in one area to boost innovation, collaboration, and efficiency by physically being closer together. Before we do the math, what's actually inside of these golf balls? It's the space-based infrared system. It tracks a ring of global satellites that detect missile launches anywhere on Earth. But to have this giant net of satellites takes a lot of cash. So let's do the math on that $70 billion. In 2024, Colorado pulled $22.8 billion for local aerospace companies, $12.3 billion for military bases, and $3.4 billion for federal research labs. That is $38 billion in a single year. But how does that $38 billion turn into 70? The multiplier effect. So when the aerospace industry hires one engineer, their salary cascades through the economy. If an engineer spends their $100 salary to buy bananas from a local grocer, the local grocer spends $80 of that to buy more bananas, and the farmer uses $60 of that to buy fertilizer, and so on, until there's actually more than $100 added to the economy. This isn't just about building missiles, it's about funding the local fire department, the coffee shops, the barbers. It's literally putting food on the table for people who have nothing to do with the military. And the people actually building this tech, I mean, they aren't James Bond villains. They're incredibly passionate people, highly skilled, and they have mortgages and car payments and kids in travel soccer. To build something as advanced and lethal as a missile defense network, you need people who've dedicated their lives to this. You need people from the best engineering schools in the country. You need people like Aaryan.
All right, so I'm in Lockheed Martin Space. So essentially we make satellites for missile detection, tracking, and then we send that information over to the DoD. It's pretty much what you'd expect. It's pretty much like a mini NASA there. Everything that I saw there is something that I could totally see myself pursuing as a career.
Aaryan just wants to build incredible things. Like he said, it's like a mini NASA in there. Except NASA's budget is pennies compared to the Pentagon's, and if you want to build something as incredible as what Aaryan does, it's usually through the business of war. And once you're in and those golden handcuffs shut, your top secret clearance becomes a golden ticket for lifelong job security. The pay is incredible, the benefits are amazing, and you can buy that huge house in Aurora. But your entire suburban dream is inextricably linked to that military paranoia. If world peace actually breaks out tomorrow, the demand for missile engineers plummets. And now you can't transfer your highly specialized skills to another job without taking a massive pay cut. Engineers don't want a war, but their financial survival depends on the perpetual, terrifying threat of war. Which brings us to the reality of this business. If the goal of deterrence is peace, then why are companies like Lockheed Martin and Palantir always hiring, even when we aren't in a situation of war?
Defense will be a successful industry that holds a lot of money, even in times where there is not really much conflict going on.
It's not a conspiracy, it's just a math problem. It reveals the core of the trap. To keep this economy afloat, the money printer can never ever stop, and the defense industry has made sure to keep it going. First is the Iron Triangle, the multi-billion-dollar pipeline between the Pentagon, defense contractors, and Capitol Hill. The same people writing the rules are also the ones building and buying the weapons. You're born into the deep pockets of the Pentagon, move to Capitol Hill to make those pockets deeper, and then finally retire to your cushy corporate job at the very defense contractors you once funded. And this one-way ratchet has worked for decades. But right now, traditional defense contractors are terrified. Traditionally, defense giants thrived on cost-plus contracts, which basically guaranteed them a profit at the expense of taxpayers. But today, companies like SpaceX and Anduril are entering the market, trying to create cheap, lethal technology at fraction of the cost. And this new wave of cheap tech is a threat to these old guard defense giants. To survive, they don't just innovate, they play politics. Let's look at the F-35 fighter jet. According to Lockheed Martin's own economic impact data, they've deliberately spread their entire supply chain across 45 states and Puerto Rico just for the F-35. This creates hundreds of thousands of jobs all over the country. Sounds great, right? No, it's not. It's terrible. Because if a politician decides to cut the defense budget, they're going to have to explain to their own voters why they chose to lay them off. Add in the millions of dollars of lobbying each year, and I can surely say that our local economies are held hostage. Let's enter the realm of sunshine and rainbows. What if all conflicts stopped tomorrow and all countries held hands and sang kumbaya? Well, you have to look at it in two timelines, the long run and the short run. Earlier, I told you that a missile engineer's skills wouldn't easily translate over to the private sector without taking a massive pay cut, which is true in the short run. But in the long run, at a macroeconomic scale, the US economy wouldn't sink into the ocean. We'd be fine.
I can summarize it in a quote: God didn't give us wings so we can build them.
The brilliant engineering brainpower currently locked up into building missiles would eventually flow into other industries like climate tech, medical research, or high-speed rail. We'd survive. But in the short run, this suburb wouldn't. The immediate shockwave of peace would throw the multiplier effect into reverse. Then, without government contracts, the engineer has no reason to stay in a place like Aurora. The grocery store won't get their salary, and their money won't multiply through the local economy. And that is the paradox of peace. The tragedy isn't that world peace would destroy us. The tragedy is the transition. We're seemingly surrounded and trapped by the Iron Triangle to keep spending more on defense. Millions of regular middle-class Americans depend on the world being a terrifying place to fund their livelihoods, and it traces it all back to this green piece of paper that rules it all. And here's the good news: we don't have to stay trapped. Look at this data. The red line is absolute defense spending adjusted for inflation. Right here, after the Cold War ended in 1991, we slashed the defense budget by hundreds of billions of dollars. And guess what? The economy didn't collapse. We diverted that engineering power into the 90s tech boom. Today, companies like SpaceX are already forcing the Pentagon to spend less on bloated contracts. It shows that untangling our economy can be done. Reducing the budget can be done. We just have to advocate for it. We have some of the brightest and most capable minds in this country, and we have to advocate for a future where these engineers can use their skills to build our future. We traveled from the piles of cash in DC through Lockheed Martin's rockets to this town in Colorado where there are satellite golf balls the size of blue whales. So what can you do about it? All of my sources are in the description. I encourage you to go check them out. Challenge me, react to this video, because that's the whole point. Think about it, talk about it, put your voice out there, because world peace isn't impossible. We just have to build the peace engine to get us there. Because if you ever look at our government or our economy and feel hopeless, always remember that there is another way. Thanks so much for watching. Consider subscribing, and I'll see you in the next one.